Mafia boss asked, "Can I help you?" Girl said, "Don't touch me." The next moment shocked was shocking. No one knew at that moment that this strange sentence would later become a turning point in several lives. That evening looked ordinary from the outside, but inside the city, something real and powerful was about to happen. The rain had been falling non-stop since afternoon. Streets were wet, traffic was slow, and people were in a hurry to get home. Near the corner of a busy road stood a small cafe, warm and softly lit. Inside, people were drinking tea, talking quietly, and waiting for the rain to stop. Outside the cafe, under the dim streetlight, stood a man most people feared but few dared to look at directly. He was known as the Mafia boss. His real name was Victor Romano. He wore a dark coat, clean shoes, and a calm expression. To strangers, he looked like a successful businessman. Only the city knew his real power. Victor was not there to cause trouble. He had just finished a meeting nearby and was waiting for his car. He stood still, observing the world the way he always did, quietly, carefully. Years in power had taught him one thing: people show their true nature when they are afraid. At that same moment, a young girl named Lily was running down the street. Her breath was heavy, her hair was wet, and fear was written clearly on her face. She kept looking back as if someone was following her. Her heart was beating fast, not from the rain, but from panic. Lily was not a criminal. She was an ordinary girl who had seen something she was never meant to see. That mistake had turned her life upside down. As Lily reached the cafe, she pushed the door open quickly and stepped inside without looking. In her rush, she collided with Victor, who had just decided to walk in as well to escape the rain. The sudden impact made Lily lose her balance. Instinctively, Victor reached out his hand to stop her from falling. His touch was gentle. But to Lily, it felt like danger. She pulled away sharply, her eyes wide, her voice loud with fear. "Don't touch me," she shouted. The cafe fell silent. Conversation stopped. Cups froze in midair. All eyes turned toward them. Victor slowly withdrew his hand. He did not get angry. He did not shout back. Instead, he looked at Lily closely. Her reaction was not rude, it was pure fear. He had seen that look many times before on the faces of people who had been hurt by life. "Can I help you?" Victor asked calmly, his voice low and controlled. Lily shook her head, stepping back again. Her body was tense, ready to run. She did not know who Victor was, but something about powerful men scared her deeply. Her past experiences had taught her to fear authority, fear control, and fear being trapped. Grace, the cafe owner and Lily's friend, noticed the tension immediately. She rushed over from behind the counter. "Lily, what happened?" she asked, placing a protective hand on Lily's shoulder. Lily did not answer. Her eyes were still fixed on Victor, then quickly moved to the door again. Grace looked at Victor and recognized him. Her face changed slightly. Everyone in the neighborhood knew him. Fear rose in her chest, but she stayed calm for Lily's sake. Victor noticed Grace's reaction and understood. He stepped back, giving them space. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "I didn't mean to scare her." Those words surprised Grace. This was not what she expected from a mafia boss. Lily slowly looked at him again. She expected anger, threats, or control. Instead, she saw a man standing quietly, his hands open, his expression serious but not cruel. Before anyone could say more, Lily stiffened. Through the glass window of the cafe, she saw something that made her blood run cold, a black car stopping across the street. Her breathing became shallow. Her fingers dug into Grace's arm. "They found me," Lily whispered, her voice barely audible. Victor followed her gaze. His eyes narrowed slightly as he recognized the car and the men inside. In that instant, he understood the situation. This was not a misunderstanding or a simple argument. This was danger. Real danger. The rain continued to fall outside, unaware that lives inside the cafe were about to change forever. What began as a simple question, "Can I help you?" had opened the door to a moment that would shock everyone and reveal truths no one was ready to face. The moment Lily whispered that they had found her, the air inside the cafe changed completely. Grace felt Lily's body trembling under her hand and understood that this fear was not small or imaginary. This was the kind of fear that comes from being hunted, from knowing that running may not be enough. Grace gently pulled Lily closer to her, trying to block her from the window, while her own mind raced with questions she was too afraid to ask out loud. The other customers sensed that something was wrong. Some pretended to look at their phones, others stared quietly, but no one dared to speak. Outside, the black car remained still, like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. Victor stayed silent, but inside his mind, memories surfaced. He knew that car, knew the type of men who used it, and knew the trouble they brought wherever they went. They were reckless, greedy, and violent, nothing like the controlled world he ruled. He studied Lily again, noticing the way her eyes kept moving, the way her shoulders were tight, and the way she stood as if ready to run at any second. This was not someone playing games or seeking attention. This was a girl carrying a secret too heavy for her age. Victor had seen many people beg for help in his life, but Lily had not asked for anything. Her fear spoke louder than words. Grace finally broke the silence, her voice shaking but firm. She asked Lily what was going on, why she was being followed, and what she had gotten herself into. Lily swallowed hard, struggling to speak. Words felt dangerous, as if saying too much might bring the men inside faster. She explained in broken sentences that she had overheard something she should not have, something about illegal deals and powerful names. She had not meant to listen, but once she did, there was no turning back. The men outside believed she was a threat, even though all she wanted was to live her life peacefully. Every step she took after that day felt like borrowed time. Victor listened carefully, not interrupting even once. Grace noticed his attention and found it strange. This was not how she imagined a mafia boss would act. There was no anger in his eyes, no hunger for control. Instead, there was calculation mixed with something else, something that looked almost like responsibility. Victor understood one harsh truth very well: when dangerous people believe someone knows too much, they do not stop until that person is silenced. He had been part of that world long enough to know how it ended for the weak and unprotected. The door of the cafe suddenly opened, letting in cold air and rain. Everyone flinched, but it was only another customer leaving in a hurry. Lily's nerves were stretched so tight that even small sounds felt like threats. Grace decided they could not stay still anymore. She whispered that Lily should go to the back room, a small storage area with another exit. It was risky, but staying visible was worse. Lily hesitated, looking once more at the window, then at Victor. She did not trust him fully, but something in her told her he was not her enemy. That feeling confused her, because fear had taught her never to trust powerful men. Victor spoke again, his voice low so only Grace and Lily could hear. He told them calmly that running blindly would not help and that those men outside would notice any sudden move. He said this was not a suggestion but a warning based on experience. Grace felt a chill at his words, realizing that he understood this danger far better than she did. Lily looked at him with wide eyes, torn between fear and hope. She asked him why he cared. Victor paused for a moment before answering. He said some situations remind a person of things they cannot forget, and this was one of them. Outside, the men in the black car finally stepped out, adjusting their jackets and scanning the area. Their presence alone was enough to tighten everyone's chest inside the cafe. The rain masked their footsteps, but not the threat they carried. Lily's time was running out. Grace's hands were cold, her mind racing, knowing that once those men entered, everything would change. Victor straightened his posture, his calm expression returning fully now. Whatever happened next would not be ordinary. The fear in Lily's eyes, the tension in the cafe, and the quiet confidence of the Mafia boss were all moving toward a moment that could not be stopped. The black car's engine had barely cooled when the men stepped onto the wet pavement, their eyes scanning the cafe as if they could already see through walls. They moved with confidence, arrogance, and danger stitched into every step. Inside, Lily's breath caught in her throat. She instinctively moved closer to Grace, her hands gripping her friend's arm as if it were the only anchor in a chaotic world. Grace whispered reassurances she didn't entirely believe, but it was enough to make Lily feel slightly less exposed. Victor, on the other hand, did not panic. He observed each man as they entered, noting how they carried themselves, the subtle signs of nervousness beneath the surface of their bravado. He had been in rooms like this countless times before, where danger walked in slowly, casually, pretending it could be ignored, but he had also learned that moments like these often revealed a person's true character in seconds. The men advanced with smirks, thinking themselves untouchable. One of them, a tall man with a scar running across his cheek, grabbed Lily's arm roughly, intending to intimidate her into silence. The cafe's other patrons froze. Cups were abandoned, chairs shifted slightly, and the room was filled with tension so thick it felt like a physical wall. Lily's scream pierced the quiet, raw and desperate, the sound of pure fear. Grace tried to push the man away but he shoved her roughly to the side. Victor's calm gaze hardened. There was no sudden shouting, no reckless movements, he didn't need them. Years of experience had taught him that power was not always about fists or weapons, sometimes it was just presence, the quiet kind that froze even the boldest predators. Victor stood, straightening his back, and for the first time, the room felt the weight of him. There was no need for words yet, the men felt it instantly. This was the same man whose name alone could make neighborhoods go silent, whose reputation had been carved with careful precision, ruthlessness, and intelligence. His footsteps were deliberate, each one placing him closer to the men, and yet he spoke softly, almost too calmly for what was happening. "Let her go," he said. The words were quiet, measured, and precise, yet in them was a command that brooked no argument. The tall man with the scar tried to mask his shock with a nervous laugh, but it faltered when he realized the full seriousness in Victor's gaze. The other men stiffened. They looked at each other, confused and uncertain, sensing the shift in energy. Victor didn't raise his voice, didn't shout or threaten, he simply existed in that moment as the apex of authority in that room. It was a silence so powerful that the air itself seemed to tighten. Then the first man spoke, stammering, "We didn't know she was with you, we didn't." Victor cut him off before he could finish, his voice calm but absolute. "She is not with me," he said, "but she is under my protection now. You will leave, and you will not follow her again." The words were simple. Yet they carried consequences heavier than any weapon. Fear replaced arrogance instantly. The men's smirks vanished, their confidence crumbling under the quiet weight of a man who had survived, controlled, and dominated situations far more dangerous than this. Slowly, as if the room itself had shifted, they stepped back. One by one, they retreated toward the door, realizing that trying to challenge Victor here would not end well. The tall man with the scar cast one last threatening glance at Lily, but even he understood that empty threats carried no power now. They exited quickly, their presence leaving the room lighter but leaving behind a tangible residue of tension and relief. Lily collapsed into Grace's arms, tears streaming down her face, not just from fear, but from disbelief. She looked at Victor, eyes wide, not sure how to process what had just happened. The man she feared, the powerful Mafia boss whose reputation terrified everyone, had just saved her life without a single act of violence. He had not threatened them, struck them, or shouted, he had simply reminded them of the weight of his presence. Grace wiped Lily's tears, whispering that it was over for now, though the word felt weak against the memory of the fear that had gripped them both just moments ago. Victor, observing quietly, knew that the danger outside had not vanished entirely. These men were reckless, and the city had layers of threats far beyond a single encounter. Yet he also understood that a statement of control had been made, a line drawn that others would hesitate to cross. In that quiet aftermath, Victor's gaze softened as he looked at Lily. He had seen many frightened faces before, but hers carried a mix of terror, resilience, and the burden of knowledge far beyond her years. Grace noticed the subtle change in him, the slight slump of shoulders and the quiet sigh, as if saving this girl reminded him of something he had lost long ago. Lily, still trembling, looked at him with new eyes, curiosity, confusion, and a tentative trust forming where fear had once ruled completely. The shocking moment, which began with a scream and an unexpected confrontation, had ended not with violence, but with understanding, protection, and a realization that sometimes the most dangerous men were also capable of unexpected humanity. After the terrifying encounter, the cafe seemed almost unreal. The rain had slowed outside, and the city noises felt distant, like they belonged to another world. Inside, Victor, Grace, and Lily sat at a quiet corner table, the weight of what had just happened hanging heavily in the air. Victor's calm exterior remained intact, but his mind was active, analyzing every detail, every subtle clue Lily had unknowingly revealed in her movements and speech. Ava, Victor's trusted assistant, had arrived quietly behind him, her presence unnoticed until now. She was strong, intelligent, and practical, someone who had been by Victor's side through countless crises, and her calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the raw tension that still lingered around Lily. While Victor had dealt with threats through fear and control for most of his life, Ava handled situations with precision and planning, ensuring that no rash decisions endangered their goals or the people they cared about. Lily finally spoke, her voice hesitant but determined. She explained that she had stumbled upon a dangerous secret, information about illegal dealings and criminal plans that some men wanted to keep hidden at all costs. She had tried to go to the authorities but feared she would not be believed, and even if she were, she knew those she exposed would not hesitate to retaliate. Grace listened silently, squeezing Lily's hand, while Victor leaned forward slightly, studying her face and the sincerity in her words. For the first time, Lily was not speaking to strangers, she was speaking to someone who understood, someone who could act decisively. To protect her. Victor's reputation often made him a figure of fear, but that same reputation now worked in Lily's favor. He could intervene in ways ordinary people could not, creating a shield of influence and intimidation that few dared to challenge. Victor sat back, his fingers steepled under his chin, thinking. This was not an ordinary problem. This was a situation where the stakes were life and death. He had seen too many people destroyed because they underestimated danger or trusted the wrong people. Yet, in Lily's fear and honesty, he also recognized courage, a rare quality that was often punished in the world she had stumbled into. He made a choice that surprised even him, he would protect her. Not because she owed him anything, not because it benefited him directly, but because he recognized her as someone innocent caught in a violent world, someone who deserved a chance to live without fear. Ava nodded slightly, understanding what Victor planned without needing words, and immediately began calculating logistics, safe houses, escape routes, and legal protections that could move Lily out of harm's way without drawing attention. Victor addressed Lily directly, his voice gentle yet firm. He explained that from this moment forward, she would be under his protection. No one would harm her, and any threat that tried would face consequences that were immediate and severe. Lily's eyes widened at the weight of his words. She had feared powerful men for so long, but now she saw that power could also provide safety. Grace, though still cautious, realized that the same man who had saved Lily moments before was now offering her a lifeline, something rare in a world full of deception and danger. Lily asked why he would go to such lengths, why he would care for someone he didn't even know. Victor paused, looking at her intently, and said that sometimes life reminds a person of their own lost innocence, of moments they wished they could protect someone from experiencing. He implied that helping her now was, in a way, a redemption for the choices he had made in the past. A plan began to form. Ava and Victor worked in silence while Lily and Grace watched, realizing that no ordinary solution would be enough. Lily would need to disappear for a time, perhaps relocate to a place where no one knew her, a life separate from fear and danger. Legal channels would be used wherever possible, but Victor's influence ensured that the threats outside would be neutralized without direct confrontation. It was a delicate balance between control, protection, and secrecy. Lily, initially terrified of the men who followed her, slowly began to feel a cautious trust in the presence of Victor and Ava. For the first time in weeks, she could breathe a little easier. That night, as they prepared for the steps ahead, Lily reflected on what had just happened. The shocking encounter in the cafe had evolved into something she hadn't expected, a chance at safety, a moment of humanity in a dangerous world, and an understanding that not all power was used to intimidate. Victor and Ava had offered more than protection, they had offered a choice. And for Lily, a young girl suddenly thrust into danger far beyond her experience, the knowledge that she could survive this ordeal with real allies gave her a sense of hope she hadn't felt in a long time. In that quiet cafe corner, surrounded by the remnants of fear and the plans of safety, a new chapter of possibility began for all of them, one built on trust, caution, and the unspoken promise that sometimes, even in a world of danger, people could make the choice to do the right thing. The weeks that followed were a test of patience, courage, and careful planning. Lily, now safely relocated to a distant city, had begun to settle into a life she could barely imagine a month before. Each day brought a mixture of relief and anxiety, a strange combination she was slowly learning to balance. Her apartment was small but comfortable, a quiet sanctuary where she could think, plan, and start rebuilding the fragments of a life that had been shattered by fear. She enrolled in courses at a local college, making cautious steps toward independence while still following the rules set by Victor and Ava for her safety. Every morning, she woke up with the knowledge that she was protected, but also that the outside world was still unpredictable, and she could never fully let her guard down. Her nights, though, were the hardest. Sometimes she dreamt of the men from the black car, the fear so vivid that she would wake up shaking. Yet, each time she remembered the calm, controlled figure of Victor Romano and the quiet competence of Ava, a thread of hope reminded her that she was not alone in this fight. Back in the city where her ordeal began, the cafe had become a place of reflection for Grace as well. She kept it running with renewed determination, a quiet pride in the role she had played in protecting Lily. The cafe had always been her life's work, but now it symbolized more than coffee and pastries. It was a refuge, a place where ordinary people could find small moments of peace even when the world outside was chaotic and dangerous. Grace often thought about Victor and how differently the night could have gone. She knew many would never believe that a mafia boss could act with patience, humanity, and a sense of morality, but she had seen it firsthand. The quiet moments, the careful words, and the presence that radiated authority without aggression had changed everything for Lily. Grace often caught herself smiling faintly, recalling the disbelief and relief in Lily's eyes the moment Victor had simply commanded the men to leave. Victor, for his part, found himself thinking about that night more than he expected. In the world he controlled, most days were filled with strategy, power plays, and careful management of influence. Violence was often the answer. Or at least the threat of it, but in that cafe, he had discovered a different kind of strength. The ability to protect without harming, to assert authority without force, and to act morally in a life that rarely allowed for morality. He spoke with Ava about it often, quietly, in moments when the city's chaos felt distant. They discussed the delicate balance of using power to shield the innocent while maintaining the careful order of their operations. Victor had always been respected and feared, but now he understood that real respect could also come from trust, protection, and the rare act of kindness in a dangerous world. Months later, Lily began to rebuild her social life slowly. She made a few friends who were unaware of the danger she had escaped, and she found comfort in learning, reading, and exploring her new city cautiously. She still spoke to Grace regularly, sending updates about her life, small victories, and quiet fears. Every message was a reminder that she had survived, that she had been given a second chance, and that she could slowly reclaim her independence. Occasionally, she would think of Victor and Ava, understanding that their careful guidance and protection had given her this opportunity. She knew that in many ways, her life was still intertwined with theirs, even if from a distance, and she felt a deep sense of gratitude she couldn't fully express. Victor continued his life in the city, but he did so with a subtle shift in perspective. That night with Lily reminded him of his own lost innocence, of the people he had seen destroyed in the name of power, and of the small acts that could ripple into life-changing outcomes. He maintained control over his world, but he allowed small moments of humanity to guide some of his decisions. Ava, as always, was the steady hand by his side, ensuring that their plans were executed safely and effectively, and together they made choices that blended caution, influence, and a rare form of morality. Occasionally, Victor would smile faintly at the memory of the frightened girl who shouted, "Don't touch me," and how that single, terrifying moment had led to something profoundly human, a reminder that even in a life built on fear and power, the right choices could create hope, safety, and new beginnings. In the end, Lily survived, not just because she was cautious or lucky, but because she had encountered people willing to act beyond fear and self-interest. Grace continued to run her cafe, a silent witness to courage and protection. Victor and Ava moved forward, their influence carefully wielded, proving that power could be used for preservation as much as domination. The story of that night, the moment of fear, the confrontation, and the shocking display of control without violence, became a quiet legend in their circles, reminder that real life, though messy, dangerous, and unpredictable, could also offer second chances, protection, and the possibility of trust. And for Lily, Victor, Grace, and Ava, that night marked the beginning of a life that was stronger, safer, and more meaningful than they could have imagined when rain first began to fall on the streets outside the cafe.